if you want to make actual, meaningful, lasting, and positive changes in your life, you're in the right place. This is a great video for this. I personally struggled with this for quite a while. Many years ago, I would kind of start habits and then like kind of backslide and all this kind of struggle. Until I was on, I believe, my second meditation retreat. I had this just kind of like breakthrough moment where I could really fundamentally see why I backslide and why I'm not able to really like be consistent in my life. Why don't these changes like stick? Kind of what's the problem here? And it's not so much that like I, just only backslide, but it's like, how do I make this process of personal development, growth, and lasting change, how do I just make it more smooth? How do I just make this process flow in a way where it's not clunky, it's not mechanical, I'm not always kind of unnecessarily fighting and struggling against it? How do I just make this thing work on a very practical level? So on that meditation retreat, I began to see that a lot of the things that I'm interacting with, and I'm saying this in a very direct way, not in a very conceptual way, but in a very sort of embodied and direct way. The things that I'm doing are the byproduct of my actual emotional experience, by the energy within my body, the sensations within my body, the emotions in my body. A lot of the things that I'm choosing are the byproduct of all this subconscious phenomena, and if I can actually begin to rewire this subconscious phenomena, subconscious mechanisms, I can change my life. I can make meaningful and lasting changes. I began to see that my subconscious mind controls about 90 to 95% of what I do. And I started to see this in a very practical way rather than simply theoretical. I started to notice that, after the meditation retreat, I started to notice that a lot of the actual habits I'm doing, for example, there's certain forms of energy and emotion that are guiding me to do that, like scroll on my phone or eat junk food or spend time on my laptop or hang out with this person. There's emotions and energies that are subtle, right? They're very subtle, that are pulling me to do that. And the more that I could attune to this stuff, the more I could not be controlled by that. The more I could just build awareness, the more I could actually just not be controlled by these subtle influences within my environment. Now, let me get to an extremely sort of practical point of view for you. Whenever you're doing something in your life, like a habit, a continuous habit, this is like the prime place to start paying attention. A continuous unconscious habit, like scrolling on your phone, right? What emotion is driving you to do that? You'll notice that it's probably boredom or stress or anxiety or background sense of numbness or dissatisfaction or kind of feeling dull. A lot of the unhealthy habits that you have in your life are held together by emotions that you once repressed. And it's pulling you to interact with certain things as a way of avoiding those emotions. They're essentially coping mechanisms. So you have this pain, right? And then you develop all these protective coping mechanisms of avoidance, projection, denial, blame, etc. Being a victim, being superior, whatever it is. Anything to protect yourself from that internal pain. And essentially you start to organize yourself around that pain. Your life organizes itself around the avoidance of that pain. Your career can be a massive manifestation of that. And in a lot of cases, it most likely is. It's really tied into everything in your life, right? I'm not saying you have to quit your job, but I'm saying that there's facets and elements within every single domain of your life that are exactly what I'm talking about right now. The foods you eat, the people you interact with, how you relate to the people you interact with, how you relate to your work, etc. A lot of our life is organized around the avoidance of pain. Of course, we're humans. We like pleasure. We don't really like pain. But this kind of pain that I'm talking about is more so just repressed emotional pain that kind of just stays buried, forms unnecessary tensions in the body, like a raised shoulder, a closed and numb heart, a sense of a numb body, a tense gut, tense arms, tense legs, a lot of tension for the most part. Tension in the eyes, tension even in the ears. And we just kind of we start to organize around these patterns of tension, these patterns of protection, these patterns of avoidance, etc. Anything to just not feel that pain. So when we're trying to make a change to our lives, we're trying to change our patterns. We're trying to change the things that we are continuously doing. If we want to make a lasting change, it has to be in the form of a pattern in our life. It has to be reoccurring. And when we're unable to do that, it's because we typically fall back into certain forms of protection, ways of avoiding pain, essentially. So what happens when you begin to actually process that underlying pain? I want you to kind of think of like the game Jenga with the blocks, those wooden blocks, and it's like that tower. And I want you to start thinking, what happens if I just pull the wooden blocks at the bottom? The whole tower comes crumbling down, of course. You take away the foundation, everything that's built upon the foundation comes crumbling down. So processing that emotional pain is basically like we're taking the foundation and we're removing it. And then all the patterns of protection and avoidance, etc., all come crumbling down too, because the second there's nothing to protect, the second there's nothing to avoid, what good does that protective mechanism do anymore? The second we're connected and open to life and in a sense of flow and rhythm with it, the second that our body starts to feel alive and like, a lot of flowing sensation rather than numb, dull, hard, solid, dense, etc., the second we get to that point, it's just kind of easier to maintain our lasting change. It's like when we get to that point, we don't have to fall backwards anymore. We don't really have to backslide into porn. We can quit that for good, like the end of it forever. We can quit junk food for good. We can quit scrolling on our phone unconsciously because we're bored at 2 p.m. for good. These patterns literally leave forever. They're done. So when you begin to just process that pain, all the stuff that was built in relation to the pain comes crumbling down. And all of those patterns were typically very unconscious. They weren't really something you were very aware of. You applied little to no attention to them, so they just kind of kept repeating in the background. That's the subconscious mind. It's just repeating patterns that it's been programmed with. It will continuously do that till you apply attention to it and start to snap out of this sort of internal matrix that you have constructed for yourself. And of course, you simultaneously hold the key to your own freedom. That's basically what I'm telling you in this video. So a lot of your patterns are just the result of old stuck pain that your body organizes itself around. And a lot of the behaviors you do are basically so that you don't have to feel them. So those behaviors, those protective mechanisms run your life. And I want you to reflect, really core part is whenever you're trying to make changes to your life, I want you to reflect on what you typically try and do, what you typically hear from people. A lot of it is just be more grateful, think more positively. It's kind of surface level garbage that actually doesn't lead to any real fundamental change. If you want a deeper change, you have to go to that foundational level. So although, of course, like things like be less grumpy, be more grateful, think more positive, these are nice, right? But they're not going to lead to that very deep, lasting change. So essentially, the approach that I'm giving you, it means that a lot of your most stubborn patterns in your life are basically the byproduct of protection mechanisms and pain. The second that pain is resolved, a lot of those mechanisms and habits and patterns just start to fall away very naturally. Things like being present, compassionate, open. Things like feeling alive in your body. Things like being sharp and clear and focused. A lot of this stuff actually just starts to come naturally, even focused, right? It's a tricky one for a lot of people to understand. But yes, a lot of people, after doing this work, report a much better focus because distraction is a way that our ego likes to protect itself. Distraction is a way that we avoid ourselves once again. It's a very subtle thing. So for those of you with ADHD, this still applies to you, although you'll most likely need a bit more support with this. It'll be harder, right? I empathize with your struggles, but it's not invalid just because someone has ADHD. My girlfriend actually has ADHD. She does this kind of work. And it can take quite a bit of time, to be honest, to, really go deep with this stuff. We're talking about making a pretty solid change to the very organization of your body, mind, of your system, essentially. This isn't something that can happen in a week. This isn't something that can even happen in a month. This is something that begins to shift over time. So let's talk about the solution to really just how do we solve this problem of just making meaningful and lasting changes within this sort of framework that I'm giving you in this video. So you need to create space for your system and not be so engaged in fear, tension, and like tightness. And this is going to allow you to begin to break free from the patterns that you repetitively do in order to not feel the thing that you are avoiding. So you habitually hold on to fear, tightness, tension, contractions, all this kind of stuff in the body, and you don't really know how. That's the core point, is that you don't really know how you're doing it. You're just kind of doing it. And it's something that you started doing at one point in your life, and then it just kind of started to repeat itself. Because again, understand that the subconscious mind is just a sort of pattern repeating mechanism. So you can't really make a lasting change in your life if you have all this sort of like underlying subconscious stuff to just like, pave over those changes that you want to make and just repeat the old stuff. It's not really going to work. So a core part of this is establishing a meditation practice. You gotta start making this unconscious stuff conscious, starting to just direct your attention to it rather than it always being so unconscious. Right? When it comes to the tension in your body, you have to read some books on this stuff. It depends how far you want to go, but you need depth of information. You gotta have that vision for your life. You gotta have that vision for what you really want to be. So some good books, I have them on my book list. Trauma and the Unbound Body is very good. Some other ones I'm going to be adding very soon. What is this book? I'm actually currently in the process of reading it, but it's absolutely brilliant. Aligned, Relaxed, Resilient. Absolutely fantastic. A lot of the work of Judith Blackstone as well, just Belonging Here by Judith Blackstone. Very good. You need like a bit of a framework for understanding this stuff at a deeper level that I can't really give you in this YouTube video. So reading those books is basically a must. Another core point is learning to let go of control and not always interfere with the sensations and flow and energy in your body. You can watch one of my previous videos on emotional regulation. You basically need a lot of the principles that I outlined in that video. And without them, you're going to create a lot of just unnecessary tension in the body, basically. You need to connect to those physical sensations and emotions that are holding that tension in place, because that tension is basically a way that you avoid sensation. It's a way that you're protecting yourself from that pain. It's a way that you stop the continuous flow of sensation in your body. Your body's supposed to feel like a continuous flow of ever-changing sensation. And we repress that, right? We don't want to feel that. So we tense up. We start to interfere with what's actually happening. So learning to let go of control, learning to slow down, learning to give presence and awareness to your system. Awareness and presence kind of like allow it to function as it actually should. Whereas a lot of like the old patterns that are kind of stuck in there are kind of keeping it, stuck. Again, have a vision for this kind of work. You're not going to solve this in a week, a month. Some of this stuff runs very deep. We're talking about some very core protective mechanisms that you actually have. So slowly cultivate inner warmth, inner stability, and connection to your actual heart space. Your heart, your body overall is very intelligent. Learn to attune to the quality of love in your heart. That's a very important point. Right, so just opening up your heart to your own inner world rather than allowing your inner critic to always take over. That just leads to more closure. Moving on is just letting your body release tension, relax, and soften. Allowing your body to soften rather than always it being this hardened thing. So this begins to unwind all those patterns of protection until you actually hit that underlying sort of vulnerable spot, and then you can really begin to process it. And once you're able to hit that vulnerable spot, that sort of pain, you process it, you naturally kind of start to open back up. And like I said, a lot of relationship patterns, habits, beliefs, your career, things like this can be organized around a lot of that sort of unconscious pain, essentially. It bleeds into every domain of your life. So this is where, once you're able to do all that kind of stuff that I mentioned previously, this is where a lot of benefits really begin to come in. So what are the benefits of this? Old patterns naturally fall away effortlessly. Those bad habits, they start to just fall away on their own effortlessly because it's, again, we're like targeting that foundation and then all the stuff built on that foundation comes crumbling down. A very surface level solution to getting rid of porn is just maybe like throwing out your laptop and your phone or blocking the websites, right? Although, yes, having some boundaries with this stuff is good, right? In the context of, let's say, a porn addiction. But the root problem is that internal pain, because it's going to just manifest itself again, but in a different form, because that pain, that pattern, that avoidance is still there. You're not recognizing the underlying pattern that's giving rise to your porn addiction. For example, presence becomes easy. Being present, being grounded, being able to balance the internal world and the external world becomes so natural. Being able to see, hear, and also sense into your body, be aware of thoughts, having this sort of holistic awareness to yourself and your experience becomes natural, easy, and effortless. Patience naturally happens. You've all heard of respond instead of react. Responding naturally happens. Reactivity naturally subsides because you feel safe, and reactivity is a way that you defend yourself from pain. When the pain's gone, again, that reactivity just starts to fly away. You can be more open in your relationship. You can sense what careers actually fit you properly. You become more attuned to your needs. You become more nuanced in your thinking. Your perception of the world becomes more accurate. Right? You start to just feel happier. And overall, compassion for others and self-compassion, right? Compassion for yourself becomes organic. Understanding others rather than immediately hating them becomes organic. You're able to actually make better sense of the world, right? Your thinking actually becomes more complex and nuanced. Your ability to be grounded and stable in the present becomes natural. Overall, you become way more integrated, whole, and healthy. That's it for this video. If you're interested in working with me one-to-one, you can apply to do so. Link is in the pinned comment. Take it easy.